welcome to the party, pal. Your for the neighborhood house. Back with you once again. Thank you so much for joining me today here on another episode of HOLLYWEIRD Live. I love you. Remember that. I love you just the way you are. I've got a guest with me, a kindred spirit, a fellow filmmaker. This is Mr. Jay. Now, hopefully I can pronounce the last name correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jay Woelfel?
That's right. Just say it fast.
Yay.
Yeah. If you stop to think about it, you'll get it all wrong. So just say it fast.
Gotcha. We'll go with Jay. Jay here, he's one of those guys you always hear talking about. Now, Jay, I don't know if you know, but I'm a filmmaker. I've done a couple of films. I'm very much of the sort of the same school, indie filmmakers, bootstrap type filmmaking. So we're kindred spirits, and I'm happy to be chatting movies with you here today. Specifically, the Home Grown Horrors box set, which was just announced. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Thank you for being here. I guess my first question, just to sort of break the ice and kind of kick things off, how did you come to filmmaking? I think that's before I get to that, I'm not sponsored, but I always tell everybody when I'm drinking, I'm having free Seeker. I've never had this before. It's canned wine. I don't know why it's canned wine, but this is what I'm going to be. What are you having?
Cheers. I'm having water.
Water. I almost went with water, but I said canned wine. I got to try it. Cheers. Okay. So, Jay, how did you come to filmmaking? Where did that passion begin?
Probably early on, of course, as a little kid, my father got a job in Japan for 6 months. So we went over to Japan on a boat. And I read a lot of Japanese comics. I was too young to read, but they were in Japanese anyway, but it didn't matter because I was just looking at the pictures. On that boat, I did see some films, version of Huckleberry Finn, which Michael Curtiz directed, which had a really scary sort of death scene involving Injun Joe. And shortly after that, some of the early films I saw were 2001, A Space Odyssey, where I was the only one in my family to like it. I was also like the youngest one to see it. A Russian version of War and Peace. And that kind of described my various interests after that. One winter when it was 18 degrees below zero for a couple weeks in Columbus, Ohio, me and a friend got tired and ran out of stuff to do, like sledding and stuff. So had the old 8mm, not Super 8, but 8mm camera. And we shot this sort of Star Trek stop motion animation film. And then after that, I got a Super 8. I did like a James Bond parody that was supposed to be like 10 minutes long, ended up being 45 minutes long. And I really got into Bond films. It sort of started out as a parody and then was more of a kind of Bond film on its own. And eventually these were shown to a family friend at Ohio State who was a cinema teacher. And he watched this 45-minute long James Bond thing where I'd had to build all the sets, do all the stop motion. And he was like, "You could have a career doing this." I was like, "What?" Now, he thought I should be like a production designer, because I had to do everything. That really wasn't my interest. But I saw Jaws as a little kid, and that scared me, and that got me really into movies. Everybody has a movie, which sort of, a lot of people I went to film school, their movie was Star Wars. Later it was Top Gun. I mean, everybody had now Tarantino, so you've always got a key film that makes you go, wow, what is this really all about? Some movie that kind of knocks you over, and then you sort of get up and go, what is all this? My brothers and my father and mother read to me a lot as a kid. So if you're read to after getting done with picture books, you kind of imagine what, you're seeing it in your head. And I think that kind of got me into like wanting to make movies. So I started, because it was too cold and weak. My friend who helped me make that movie, he's been a news cameraman his whole life since.
Wow.
So he ended up going to film school after I did. He tried all these other things. I was kind of like, dude, why just go to film school like I did? But he's done anyway. So that's how it all started for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think almost every filmmaker is sort of has a similar story. There's a movie that speaks to you, or there's a book that triggers something visually in your mind. You're like, oh man, I'd love to see this come to life, and just that passion is just that's what I love so much about filmmaking is it's almost every art. It's writing, it's choreography, it's music. Well, I will speak about music because I know you're a composer, so we'll definitely talk about that.
No,
So go ahead.
a big thing I loved about movies was, in part, I played an instrument in bands, high school bands and stuff like that all along in junior high. And so the only really interesting orchestral music, rather than Beethoven stuff, which I loved and still love, but after you've heard all the greats, the accepted greats, there's nothing new to go see wise, especially if you're young and you're into new stuff. So film music was like, wow, what is this? And I saw a couple different movies I loved and realized that Jerry Goldsmith had written the music for these vastly different movies. And I was like, wow, there's a whole field of stuff you can do here. And yes, film, the other thing I loved about it was sort of a hodgepodge of all the arts. I mean, there's choreography, everything you just said.
Yeah.
I said or felt in terms like it's a place where being sort of a jack of all trades is a good thing. You need to kind of know or be interested in all this stuff because it's all in the works. It's got to all be functioning at the same time. Movement and all this stuff. It's got to all be going on. Color, how colors, work in a story, and just storytelling. But yeah, what you just said was a huge thing for me. It's like, wow, there's everything I'm interested in is all combined in making a movie and watching movies and loving film.
Yeah, and you can see that when you watch your films. They're very colorful. The music is ever present. So you definitely lean on all those tools, which I think makes your movies very interesting. So let's before we get really into sort of the weeds on the career, I owe it to the chat to discuss the Homegrown Horrors box set. Now, this blew everybody's mind. I mean, we were expecting it. It had been announced. Oh, there's a Homegrown Horrors box set coming out, and the only movie that was announced was yours. Beyond Dream's Door was the early one that everyone said, "Oh, okay, so it's going to have this." So I guess my question is, and I'm sure that the chat would love to know, is what's the process like when Vinegar Syndrome comes to you? How does that all work?
So what happened, and I've actually got some show and tell. I can go through the whole kind of history of Beyond Dream's Door distribution. But what happened was about 3 years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, people started like posting the movie a lot, various places like bootlegs of it on YouTube and places. I had them all taken down, but there like started to be a whole bunch of renewed interest in the film. I'm not sure what motivated that. There had been a release several years before that, but it wasn't immediately afterwards. There seemed to be no real cause and effect, but all of a sudden there started to be this interest. People started posting video reviews of the movie online. This guy named Dave Parker was, I think, the first one I ever saw. And then maybe a year after that, I started getting contacted by distributors. Now, for one thing, I had a new movie come out, Asylum of Darkness, at the time, that came out in 2017, 2018. That distributor was interested in Beyond Dream's Door and talked to me about it. And when I've met people over the years, different people, if they know me, are like, Beyond Dream's Door, you made Beyond Dream's Door. So actually 4 different distributors ended up coming to me about 3 years ago wanting the movie. Also around that time, 3-4 years ago, and even longer ago than that, people started contacting me wanting to show it as part of film festivals, asking if, hey, do you have a 35 print? I was like, it was never shot in 35, so I don't have a 35 print. There's no prints. But there was obviously something starting to happen. There were people starting. So various people came to me. I won't mention what those distributors are. They're all distributors who we've bought stuff from and like. But the key thing with this film was it was shot on film. At the time, the late 80s, video was coming in and there were video features starting to be made. And now I tell people now everything's a video feature. It's HD. They don't want to call it that. But yeah, I didn't want to shoot on video. I'd done a lot of video shorts and I'd done film shorts. We wanted to shoot on film so that if somebody wanted to print, we'd have the negative. And so it was more expensive and more complicated to shoot on film. But when these people came to me, we'd edited on video. So I didn't want to do an up-res, just up-res the video version of the film transfer because I still had the film. So several companies were like, oh, we understand. Or, I was like, would you want to go back and, retransfer the whole film and then re-edit the whole movie? And of course, most people were like, no. And then Vinegar Syndrome contacted me. A company contacted me afterwards. Actually, two other ones did later, but Vinegar Syndrome already had it. And they were willing to do that. They said they'd never done that before. This was a low-budget film, and it was shot on film. So unlike today, when you shoot videos, you tend to really roll the camera all the time. But there were still about 15 hours, about 14 hours of material they would have to retransfer and re-edit, basically eye-match to the old edit of the movie. And Vinegar Syndrome was willing to do that. They'd never done it before. I think they've done it since. And so they were paying me a little bit in advance. Their deal was really better than the other ones, and really they were willing to like take on the job of making a real HD version of this movie.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine it was a lot of work. I mean, restoring any of these movies is a monumental task. Zach says, I have not seen Beyond Dream's Door, but he can't wait to watch it. I know specifically he 100% picked up that box set.
Okay.
So he's looking forward to that. Christy is sending you good luck.
Oh, that's good. That's my wife, but I love the luck anyway. I need it.
Yes, yeah, of course. Of course. Okay, so they were willing to go through all this, time-intensive task to, essentially rebuild and remaster the film. What's the timeline from, hey, we're gonna go, you agree to the deal to now to the release, or to the announcement, I should say?
Yeah. Well, yeah, just about 3 years probably. Now the actual work they did on it was probably over 2 years. We signed the deal. I met with Joe from Vinegar Syndrome out here in LA. Signed the deal, and then there was a convention coming up in Ohio, northern Ohio, which Vinegar Syndrome was going to. So Nick Baldessere, the lead in the movie, basically drove the negative, which was still in Ohio. The DP had it at his company. Drove it up there, and we handed over the negative to Vinegar Syndrome, and they did a commentary track with Nick right then and there. Now Scott Spears, the DP, and myself were originally going to go to that convention, and we'd do group commentary right then and there. For various different reasons, we couldn't make it. So they had it. It was probably 4 to 6 months before they actually transferred it. And then after that, there was some missing material, and for a long time we dealt with how to find that or what to do with all of that. So there was a release date that then got pushed. Then a guy named Michael Felsher contacted me. He was actually doing the re-edit for them. So he sent me versions, and I gave him notes on what he'd missed. Eventually, I found the EDL, the Edit Decision List, which literally is a start and stop point for every edit in the entire movie. Wow. I did send him, and so he had that when he was doing the final match back for some of the material. Maybe only a couple months ago did they actually start to do the new special features, the new interviews and stuff like that. I had some material that had been lost, which had not been released before, which was on-set video stuff. We'd recorded on set. So I edited that together and sent it to them. There also an audition tape I sent them. None of this stuff had ever been seen before. It got lost, and when I moved, I found it. So the old releases of the movie never had that stuff on it. So they started late last year, early this year, to put together all the new special features, interviews with the producer, Dirk Ashton, the two leads, Rick and Nick, myself, Scott Spears. They did separate interviews with all of us, videotape interviews, and then we did a Zoom new commentary track. And then more recently, they retransferred a short film of mine, which is a 35 short. They transferred that just literally weeks ago. So here comes the release at the end of April. So it was, probably, Vinegar Syndrome has like 30 or more films in the works at any given time.
Yeah.
So, and it took, the transfer was done first. That took a while, and then the editing started, and they were pretty interactive with me about showing me cuts. Then we had to do color correction and all that kind of stuff. And they really fixed things that had always been wrong with the film. There were like scratches and stuff we couldn't get rid of before that we finally, got taken care of.
Wow.
But really most of that, they had to really like eye match most of the edit, and they did that. I wouldn't want to do it. And I compared it. It was like dead on, except for maybe like 20 shots, and a couple of those, I was actually the one who was wrong. Is this the same? Oh yeah, it is. But yeah, wow. There's, I don't know. I want to say there's like 2,500 edits in this movie. Now every edit has a start and a stop. So that's like 5,000 things you have to match. And then inside of that, there's dissolves. All that has to be eye matched and figured out. So, oof. It was a big job for a short movie.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm blanking on his name, but one of the employees for Vinegar Syndrome, somebody had said, "Wow, these box sets are so expensive," and this box set goes for $60. But he said, "Well, if you think about it, it's only $20 per movie, for all the amount of work that we put into it." Right. And when he, and I don't, if it's worth it, it's worth it, and I'm definitely getting it. But him putting it in that context, I'm like, wow, I never thought about it in that way. It's almost like the amount, like 2 to 3 years work for like a $20 movie. You know what I mean? I mean, that's essentially what it is. And it's even cheaper. And this is for you, chat. It's even cheaper than some of the other releases. I mean, All American Murder is $28. So, I mean, it's insane. It's such a good deal. It's such a good deal. And I know at least 2 of the movies on there are fantastic. I haven't seen Fatal Exam, so I can't speak to it. But here's what I'll do, Chad. Just so you know, I've got clips and trailers for all the movies in the Homegrown Horrors box set. I'm gonna save. I've got something for All American Murder. It's so weird. I'm gonna save it as a treat for the end because I'm here with Jay, so I want to make sure we chat his films and things like that. But stay tuned. I'm going to show you some clips from All American Murder. It's going to blow your mind. You're going to want to buy it after this. It's so weird. Okay, George says, I'll be picking this up for sure. Good choice. Zach says, was it Cinema Wasteland, the convention in Ohio?
Yes. I've always wanted to go to Cinema Wasteland. I've still never been, but that was the convention, yes.
You said you're out in Ohio, yeah?
Originally, I came from Columbus, Ohio. I've lived and worked in Los Angeles.
You're in LA. Yeah, I've got family in Ohio, so I've been there a couple times. Okay. So yeah, lovely area. But what do you miss it, or are you happy to be in LA?
I'm happy to be in LA. I went back and made 2 movies there back to back several years ago: Asylum of Darkness and Closed for the Season. Asylum was actually shot in Columbus with some of the same people who I'd worked with back on Beyond Dream's Door, and you can't go home again, and you can't. Over time, it took me a while because I used to go back at Christmas time. Things seemed kind of the same, and then when I started going back during the summer, at some point I realized this place is a jungle. I mean, everything just seemed overgrown with trees because the neighborhood I grew up in was a new neighborhood, so there weren't that many trees in it. Now you can't even see the neighborhood from the highway and stuff, so it started to look like like an Incan, ruin hiding. It's like, what happened? Where'd the city go? And they built it up and out so much. And then traffic started getting bad back there because it used to be so great to go back east. It's like, oh man, there's no LA traffic. Oh, then it started to be kind of a hassle. And sometimes the hassle was worse than LA traffic because there weren't as many choices and the freeways weren't as developed.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, I still have good friends back there. Both my parents, sadly, are now gone not that long ago. So yeah, I went back and made 2 movies in Ohio. I used to go back in the summers and teach up at Bowling Green near Toledo. I taught a production class. I did a short version of Hamlet there with them as sort of a dry run for making movies in Ohio again. I always wanted to go back to Ohio and make more movies, but producers in LA never wanted to let you out of their grip, Right. So it was only when I got things I was funding or Bowling Green helped fund the Hamlet film that I was actually finally able to go back and make films in Ohio.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm originally from Florida, from Miami, and my early movies were out there. But I love LA so much. I feel like I've always lived here. It just feels comfortable here. I don't know. I like it.
It does. I mean, I wouldn't stay here if I didn't like it. I've made a lot of good friends. Obviously, if you're into film here is a real living industry. I mean, a lot of the people we loved growing up now are dead or inaccessible, but I got to hear people talk about movies who I never thought I would meet or hear speak about stuff. And so it really is a living art. I mean, in Ohio, or if you're making films outside of LA or someplace else, it's probably cheaper. If you're doing it yourself, it's easier. But frankly, nobody in that town gives a dang that you're making a movie. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are you doing? Where in Los Angeles, people care too much.
Yes. Yes.
In fact, you make movies, but it really, it's like the thing I didn't understand before I moved to LA was I really never went to a coffee shop till I moved to Los Angeles. Like everybody was like, oh, let's meet at a coffee shop. So I never ate that much at a coffee shop in my life until I moved to LA. And then just it's like a coal town. It's really kind of LA anyway, is like a one industry town. So almost everybody meet, and sometimes that can be a little oppressive. And in LA, people tend to really hate actors, I guess, because they're always like slamming them for jobs. Oh, you make movies? Here's my resume.
Right.
In Ohio, to make movies, I had to have actor friends because I couldn't, act in the movie and make it myself. Not that I would want to, but so there are differences in attitude which aren't always good. But really, it's like a coal miner's town. I mean, everybody here, more often than not, people out here work in the industry on some level or not. And although there's backstabbing, there's also support and the understanding that like you need a job kind of thing,
Absolutely. Let's check in with chat real quick. NN Horror, welcome, buddy. I'm really excited for this box set. You should be. You should be. Videos for Review says, hello from the UK. Wondering if Jay has a favorite Vinegar Syndrome release.
Ooh, that's a good question. Obviously, I should pick my own movie, but I've not seen the box set yet. So I haven't seen this version. I don't know if it's any good or not. Weirdly enough, it's good. I mean, when they signed me up and when I went to the Monster Palooza convention out here and met them, the sales guys and stuff were like, oh, we love Beyond Dreams Door. We're looking forward to selling the hell of it and all that stuff. Do you want some movies? I was like, oh, yeah, man.
Awesome.
And so, but these were some of these are movies. I mean, Blood Hook. Have you ever seen Blood Hook?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd seen that on VHS, and I was like, oh my god, somebody finally brought out Blood Hook, which I always kind of liked. So I don't know. I don't know.
We'll say Blood Hook. Let's see. Christy agrees. She says that she's happy to be in California as well.
She's a person.
And then Horror. Let's all meet up in Ohio for that festival. It might be that'll be quite good for us.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Cinema Wasteland. Yeah, like I said, I would have that one time, but I mean, Vinegar Syndrome. They go there. That's not far from where my wife and I are at and stuff. And I've always wanted to go to that convention and never have.
That's one thing I like about them. Like, they're very fan friendly. Like, they're always at these events and they're always connecting. That's actually how I found them as well at a convention.
The other thing I should say about Vinegar Syndrome is, when they picked up Beyond Dreams Door, I was watching their releases, as they came by each month. I wasn't really waiting for mine yet, but eventually it was the period of like, well, will they announce it this month? People keep asking me, and like they were bringing out every movie that was coming out around the same time Beyond Dreams Door did. It was like that horror section of the video wall in 1990, and they're like filling in all the dots. I was like, okay, I remember right where that was and where Beyond Dreams Door was compared to where that movie was. So I was just like, I told him, it's like, this is the whole family of films that were coming out. You're recreating that video shelf.
They want that. That's what they're looking for sure.
Oh yeah, that whole period, that like late 80s horror thing has become a real sort of golden age for people.
Yes, absolutely. The video store era, absolutely. Jeff has a question. Great cover art. Who did the art? Hi, Jay. Well, it was done by the Dude Designs, but did you get approval on that, or how'd that work?
No. I mean, they contacted me. I sent them a part of when you make a movie. You always need to have a lot of photo material. You should take as many pictures as you can during your shoot because all distributors always ask for that. Used to be you had to have a certain number of black and white. They wanted slides, all these things, but you need to have pictures taken of your movie. You work real hard to make the movie. You got to remember that you need to take stills, or else you're going to do frame grabs, and those. Right. Sometimes they're great, and sometimes they're just everybody's like, you get all these odd smeary still frames. So I sent them all the material I had. They asked for the old box art and stuff, and then they just did it. So I didn't see it till you guys did, and I like it. I think it's cool, and I know that guy's work. He's done other stuff.
Yeah.
I went to the website, but no, I knew they were doing it. But for better or worse, The only thing I don't like is the monster has 3 fingers on the box cover. When we made the movie, in animation, you learn that lots of animated characters have 3 fingers because it's like a hand, but it's easier to animate. Because if you put 5 fingers on a character, it looks too big, like every character has baseball mitts. And it's totally true if you ever animate stuff. So the original maquette that the effects guy did for the movie, which was about as big as my hand, the original, it was, what a maquette is, like a clay version monster. It had a kind of hood, and it was about big as my hand. And he made it with 3 fingers. I was like, no, it's not going to be a cartoon. So now the Beyond Dreams Door monster has 3 fingers. But I told other people on the crew, I was like, well, it's been 30 years, so he's lost a couple fingers in the meantime. But they did kind of base it on what the monster really looks like in the movie, and the color scheme is right, and the title design is somewhat like the previous title designs and stuff. So, they did a nice job, really nice job. But I didn't see it until 2 days ago, just like everybody else.
2 days ago. How many fingers does it have, though, in real life?
I think it has 5, or at least it has 4 and a thumb. It's based on a giant sloth hand is what that's based on.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that monster. I mean, spoiler alert: there's a monster in the movie, but that's some good stuff. That's what I love, and we'll talk about Asylum of Darkness a little later. Is the practical effects? That's the stuff. That's like a completely lost art. When I was growing up in the 80s, that's the only thing that makes those movies rewatchable, is that they feel real. They're not CG, they're not computer animated. It's like this is 100% with the actor, and you can suspend disbelief a little better. So So thank you for doing practical effects. I'm sure that was something that was an important element for you, for your filmmaking, yes?
Yes. I mean, we did Beyond Dreams Door, even like low budget movies. I mean, there were plenty of opticals. This is after Star Wars and all. So, everybody wanted to have opticals and lightning shoot out everybody's butthole and stuff in movies. You could do all that stuff. But usually on a low budget, it just looked like crap. It could look great, but usually in the low budget, it looked like crap, especially if you were doing video post, it looked like crap. So the whole thing was like, we're going to do practical effects. I didn't want it to be a man in a suit. So we built a small version of the monster, kind of a Kermit the Frog kind of thing, probably about the same size as Kermit, where the arms were kind of controlled by rods, and it was like from the waist up. And then we built 2 hands and then a head. And we were going to build feet, but that never really worked out and didn't really matter. So the monster is a combination of those different scaled elements. And when I went to do Asylum of Darkness years later, that was originally written after Beyond Dreams Door. Beyond Dreams Door came out. It was pretty successful when we started talking about what are we going to do next. And the distributor was supposedly going to fund it, which turned out to be BS. So we sued them and got our money. And so the movie made money. But there were a lot of ideas that came up. So the original concept for Asylum of Darkness was to be kind of in the spirit of Beyond Dreams Door. Not really essentially a sequel, but so when I finally decided to make the movie, like 20 some years later, I met with this guy, Brian Spears, who's a makeup effects guy out of New Jersey and New York. You can look up his credits. He's worked on a lot of stuff. He even worked on Walking Dead, the TV show.
Oh, okay.
So I sent him the script. He was supposed to work on my movie Ghost Lake, and he did end up working on it. He was booked. He wanted to help me, and so I sent him this script. And he read it maybe 2 years before I made the movie. And this sounds like I'm making this up, but he goes, "This is the best script I've ever read that I could be involved with. When you make this movie, you have to promise me that you'll hire me to do the effects." And so, and he was talking about, do you want to do them practically or whatever? I said, yes. The original concept that was that it would be practical. And let's do that because everybody isn't doing it. Now, since then, it's kind of become a thing. But at the time, it was a thing between like Brian and I. It's like, no, we're going to do practical effects. He and his partner, there's a 2-person crew to do all the effects for Asylum of Darkness. But yeah, we shot that on 35, which is at a time when everybody was basically shooting video. So we're going to shoot it on film, and we're going to do practical effects. Damn it! And that was kind of our guidepost for Asylum of Darkness.
Oh man, that was shot on 35. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was actually because we had multiple cameras. We needed a B unit to shoot the effects stuff in order to make our schedule. It was really because of some of the contacts we had. it really was cheaper to have, say, 335 cameras than it was to have 3 real top-end HD cameras.
Gotcha.
At that time also, which has been, when we were shooting, if you wanted to have a finished thing to show in a theater, it was also could be cheaper to go that route if you did it carefully, which we did. But yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. But anyway, yes, that was shot on 35. And there's a print to that movie too. So there was the final transfer is done off a negative that was done optically. So there's no like digital monkeying around with it before. What you see is the way old movies used to be transferred. You created a negative optically with optical printers, and then you made a transfer of that, which then it becomes digital. But yeah, that was how that movie was done.
Kresha Key says, birthday present for me, homegrown box set. That's going to be a good present. Actually, mine too. My birthday's April 26th, so it's coming out. Well, I should get mine early because I'm a subscriber, so I should get mine before that. But yeah, absolutely a present. Let's see here. Zach says, and at conventions, all of their movies with slips are $20. Are you kidding? That's nuts.
Right. That's a deal. Yeah.
That is a deal, man. Wow, I had no idea. My buddy Wet Movie One is stopping in. Hey, Poop Poop Head is here. Thanks for being here, man. Fett has a question. I think this is I don't know if this is just for the chat, but what are your thoughts on how VS selects what movies become VSAs? I'm so on the fence about VSAs, man. I feel like it started out action, and now it's like low budget horror. So I'm not sure what distinguishes VS from VSA anymore. That's my feeling.
Yeah, me neither. I was like, what?
Looks like the next Cinema Wasteland is October 1 through the 3rd on 2021. That's nice. Conventions are going to be coming back, man. Hopefully Halloween isn't ruined. By the way, chat, I just got my first vaccine, so I'm halfway there. I'm very lucky.
I just got my second, so I got a few more days till my 95%, hits. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that needle they used was big, man. The one they gave me was like massive. Ouch. Bozo After Dark says, wasn't BDD influenced by certain Eldritch euphonium solos? Jay?
Sure, of course. When we did the score to that movie, they were actually like, that was the beginning of sampled music rather than just synthesizers. So the score is a combination of both. But the final piece in that movie does have some Eldritch euphonium solos in it. I played the baritone in band and in marching band later. And so did Bozo After Dark, although we did not meet until years later. Only recently have I gotten what I consider to be a really great euphonium sample. And my new scores have got loads of euphonium finally.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something you scored recently. We'll save that towards the end. A silent picture, which is on YouTube. So I'll have that link for you guys in the description later on.
Oh, can I show you guys some box art here real quick?
Sure. What do you got?
I want to sort of take you through the. This is the history of Beyond Dreams Door box art. Okay. Where should I show this? Can you see this? I got to get in here somewhere you can actually see it.
The glare. So, oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah.
Anyway, this is the original. Okay, there we. What is? Oh, it's the actual screen I'm staring into. That's what's like. This is the original VHS box of the movie, which came out in 1990.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
This is. You maybe see these little logos on it. This is the Vid America. Anyway, this is the original VHS version.
Gotcha.
It came out in Japan and a bunch of foreign countries. So this is the Japanese box art for the movie.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's cool.
Pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It's called Beyond the Dreams Door. And the names are spelled phonetically. So this is the Japanese release. Then I remastered it and started looking for a DVD release and did this sort of artwork with somebody who actually had to help work on the movie. which has got the Monster Hand and the Joe Bob Briggs review on there and stuff. So I shot the movie around for 2 years or more to finally get a distributor. And then by then the box looked like this, or like this poster over my shoulder.
Yeah.
This was the version with like tons and tons of extras. Here we go. Okay. With tons of extras and stuff on it. And all those extras are on this new release too.
Nice.
Then there was a VHS release. I never thought the movie had come out on VHS again, but there was a limited VHS release of it, which had this sort of gore box art to it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this is a big clamshell, you know.
Oh, that's cool. And that's recent? You said that was recent?
Yeah, this is maybe 6 years ago, something like that.
Wow. That's
and
awesome.
Then the new one. But yeah, so maybe this helped kind of spark interest in it. This sold out like immediately. It was a real short run. But yeah, I never get a VHS of my movies, of any of my films again. Oh, and yeah, so those are all the various releases since 1989 until now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh,
Zach, the movie we were talking about is called Asylum of Darkness. It's his most recent film. We're chatting about that in a little bit.
Yep.
And Jeff says, "What's your favorite on-set story?" There's got to be thousands.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll try to stick with like Beyond Dream's Door favorite on-set story. A friend of mine was getting married. The guy who shot that first movie, you know, when it was too cold to shoot my news, he was getting married during this shoot. It was Dirk, the director, the producer, sort of directed along with the assistant directors the beheading scene, which is on the poster, which happens someplace in the movie. Let's not say where. So I went to the wedding and went to did the reception and the whole thing, and then like still wearing my tux, like came to the shoot to like help out and watch the shoot. So coming as a guest to my own shoot wearing a tux, like was one of my favorite stories. The other thing one day is like they got food for everybody. Well, there's a scene where there's a bunch of sort of zombies or dead dreamers. They're not really zombies, but some people call them that. So of course everybody needed to bring a zombie that day. That was like, bring your friend, your friends will all be zombies. So we ended up with about 25 zombies. We're shooting outside of this abandoned house, which we did not have permission to shoot in, but hey, it's an abandoned house. Who's going to kick us out of here? So we shoot outside with all the zombies. And then whenever we're aimed out the windows, we need some zombies out there again to show that there's, this is a whole world of people wandering around, these dead dreamers. So they're still there. And the crew paid for their own food. We bought food for the actors, but, we'd go get it. So everybody kicked in their whatever, their Wendy's orders or whatever it was. We're inside the house in the basement of this gnarly old house shooting. The food shows up. And so they're like, okay, the food's here. It's like, okay, yeah, as soon as we get the setup done, we'll come up and we'll like eat. So we do the one setup, we come upstairs, and the zombies have eaten all of our food.
Oh.
And they didn't buy it, they didn't pay for it either. So the zombies ate our food. So I'm like, what? The extras ate our food, everybody's all horked off. So we shot some more, and it turned out the guy who went and got the food, I think it might have been Jack Nieberline, it might not have. So whoever it was went out and out of their own pocket, like rebought all that food for us.
Oh, wow.
We repaid them later, but then so shortly afterwards, they just showed up with the food again. So that was a really nice thing to get done.
That's awesome. You gotta watch out for those hungry zombies on set, man. That's if they're just hanging around, they just eat.
Don't leave them around with your food.
No.
Zombies take your food.
They do. They yeah, especially extras with nothing to do. That's all they do. Okay. So, since a lot of you guys in the chat have not seen the movie, I've got a trailer for you. We're gonna watch. I found this off of YouTube. I apologize for the quality. It's about 2 minutes, but it gives you a good feeling for the movie. I think you can get a good impression of what you're in store for. And you might have a lot more questions after seeing the trailer, guys. So let's take a look at that real quick.
Professor Knox. Did you read this?
What is it?
Just a dream, I guess.
I'll give it a look.
Thanks. I've got to go.
Benjamin Dobbs has opened a door into his mind.
Has anything even remotely like your dream ever happened to you in real life?
No, absolutely nothing.
The dream, is it always the same?
They're like a chain, hooking on to each other. I don't want to know where it's going to end.
And unleashed a horror for all those who know what he dreams.
I can't feel anything! Come on!
It's not just a dream anymore.
Beyond Dream's Door.
We have things to do before we go to sleep.
Whoa, there we go. Okay, so that was probably a first look for a lot of you. Video store review with his first impression. This looks sick. As a filmmaker myself, I'd kill to shoot on film, to work with practical effects, and have a genuine VHS run with cult status. Alas, I have iPhones and YouTube. Not so exciting. You know, hey man, don't count yourself short. That is the new medium. Use what you have. Use what you have. Zach says, I can't wait to see the new transfer of this. Yeah. Same here. Now, you've been posting some pictures on Twitter. What do the transfers look like? Are you happy?
Oh yeah, it's 16, so you see a little more grain than you would in 35. But really looking at those and I haven't seen the final of this either. They sent me like a HD version, but it was like being on set again. Because in the original movie and in the trailer, like the monster's red, the wall's blue. Well, it's not. There's all these different shades that you just don't see on VHS, especially like blues and reds always like bled. They were just big blobs. Yeah. So it was really like looking at this transfer is really like being on set again, because I'd just forgotten about, and that's really it was really that remarkable, and it was great to get to fix certain things. When you get camera rollout towards the end of a reel, you get certain scratches and stuff like that, and they cleaned up all that stuff. So you could it was just distracting. You could always tell we didn't have that many, we didn't shoot that many takes. So sometimes you had what film you had. So the best take was during the rollout or whatever you had to use it. So there'd be like hairs and stuff popping up in holes in the film you couldn't fix. Well, it's all fixed now.
That's awesome. It's very exciting. And
let me say that trailer, the voiceover is a very well-known voiceover guy. The editor and one of the producers on this movie is Surazatka, who went on to have a big and still has a big career in motion picture advertising. So as a favor, she got that guy to do the voiceover for that trailer. That was the re-release trailer, not the original trailer.
Gotcha. Well,
Dave Parker, who cuts for a lot of reality TV shows, he's directed stuff himself. He cut that trailer for me too. So the hats off to those two for making that trailer as good as it is.
That's awesome. It's an impressive movie, for a first feature, and as they say, regional horror. I mean, it's definitely it's a very unique experience. Lots of blood and guts and monster fun. I liken it to somebody asked me, well, what's kind of like, don't tell me details, but what is it like? You know, like the Hollywood pitch. It's this meets this. So I said, to me it feels like David Lynch meets Evil Dead. That's kind of the energy I got from it. So if that inspires you, Chad, to go pick up your box set right now, please do, because you will not be disappointed.
It was making that. If you make an independent movie, my big thing is like, let's bring out a drive-in and let's get it up there,
That's
man.
Great, yeah, why not?
We shot on film, which was part of our, we wanted to be a film thing. But I did a lot of shorts before I did this feature. So good, bad, or as indifferent as it is, it would have been nowhere near as good if I hadn't done a lot of shorts before that. And if I didn't work with a lot of the same people over and over again. So we got to know each other and what we did well together. The real core group of this movie was Dirk Ashton, Scott Spears, and myself, the producer, DP, and director, writer. Randy Spears helped edit it. I mean, I don't mean to discredit other people, but pretty much everybody in the principal positions, we'd gone to film school together for 3-4 years, made all these shorts. So we made a lot of mistakes. So when we did the feature, we realized the opportunity. It's like, oh man, this is a real movie. Shorts were like, this is a real movie to us. So it was exciting at the time to get to make a feature. It wasn't like, oh, we don't have enough money to do this or that. It was just that, oh man, this is a feature. So there was a lot of sort of genuine energy and excitement just in the opportunity. And a lot of the things I did were from watching movies in a theater that were later on TV and trying to sort of shoot it more like a theatrical movie than a shot straight to TV movie. So there's a few more wide shots than there maybe usually be. There's more coverage. There's more coverage than you might usually do, because big Hollywood movies always just have tons of coverage. Every motion is time for a new cut. So the movie's a little bit hyper in that regard. But a big thing when you're making an independent movie is not to try to do, I want to make The Matrix for $20,000. I mean, that's a terrible idea. But if you make something that is not just like everything else, then, you don't have what The Matrix has. But you've got something they can't have, which is also like risk. Like you get your own money, you make your own movie. Try to tell a story and reach an audience, but you should do something that you don't get to see every day, because you're not going to do it as well as the guys who do it every day in Hollywood and for Netflix and stuff. So make something that's its own thing. Your virtue is your ambition, and I think your reach. They say your reach and your grasp. I think you should always like sort of your grasp. Your reach should almost exceed your grasp. You should be working hard. You should be sweating to go like, we're going to have to work hard. We can pull this off, but we're going to have to work at it, rather than do something that's like, oh, this will be easy. Let's not break a sweat. That's what leads to bad movies.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Zach says, I wish there was an interview with the DP. I always love hearing them talk about indie features like this. Also, was the DP involved in the VS transfer? Yes, he and I don't know where different people have come to find this movie. I showed you all those covers. So there's people who saw the VHS version and never saw the other releases or never saw the different cuts of the movie. The DP is interviewed originally for the release, and that's on this. He was on both. There's 2 group commentaries, which the DP is very much involved with. Scott, the DP, was involved with the color correction notes, as was the producer. So yeah, the Scott's out there. He's not here today, but he's alive and well, and he shot Asylum of Darkness too. But yeah, he's definitely a presence on the commentary tracks, and he was really the guy who suggested I turn this movie into a feature originally. He and his twin brother Randy, who was one of the editors on this film. But Scott's, when we were wanted to do a feature, he said Beyond Dreams Door was made as a short originally. It won some awards and kind of got me noticed in the department. It was shot on video before I started doing films. And Scott, that was a really interesting idea. If we're going to do a feature, why don't you expand it? Which I did. And there were things I was going to do in the short and I didn't, and things that, the short was maybe a little more artsy because it was done specifically for a class, where Beyond Dreams Door used students to make the movie, but was not really, the university didn't fund it.
it was really an independent film with a student crew. But yeah, so Scott's out there and he was involved with this. But yeah, he was the guy who said, turn this into a feature. This is an interesting idea. And the exploding light bulb thing, that was totally Scott's idea. And he was a producer on the movie too. So he helped then, he's helped now. The DP is definitely a key figure. Scott's a good friend of mine. And yeah, check it out. He's part of it all.
All right. Zach is excited. I know Zach is a DP himself, so I know he's always interested in hearing what the DPs have to say. I don't want to veer off track too much, but there's a movie that was released with the Home Grown Horrors box set that I consider just a genuine piece of what the F cinema. Winter Beast is one of those head scratcher movies. Jay's not involved, but I just wanted to bring this to your attention, chat, because this and Beyond Dream's Door make this box set probably my favorite of the year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a clip of this movie just to give you an idea. Well, I've got two clips. Maybe I'll space them out. But here's a clip of one of the monster attacks from Winter Beast. So yeah, stop motion animation. Fed says, "Why is the creature a melted Tootsie Roll?" Because that's why. Because it was deemed so by the lords of cinema. Jay, are you familiar with Winter Beast at all?
I think I saw it once. I don't remember that clip, but I thought I'd seen this movie and remembered liking it. Show the other clip. Let's see if I remember that. If I remember that.
Okay, yeah. This clip is this is probably the strangest clip. I'm just going to show it out of context, but it's from a moment in the movie. There's just so much that happens in this movie. Okay, hold on to your butts. Here we go.
Johnny? No, it wasn't Johnny. Anyway, Johnny would have been seen. But why is he staying so long at the fair? Oh, dear, what can the matter be, dear, dear? What can the matter be, oh, dear? What can the matter be, Johnny, so long at the fair? He promised to bring me a basket of posies, a garland of lilies, a gift of red roses. He promised to bring me a bunch of blue ribbons to tie up my bonny brown hair. And it's all dear, what can the matter be, dear, dear? What can the matter be, oh dear? What can the matter be, Johnny, so long at the fair? Although I don't need any basket of posies or garland of lilies or gift of red roses, I must have that bunch of blue
Completely out of context. I'm not going to explain it. You're going to have to watch the movie, guys.
It looks like a hoot.
It's a strange one. Fed says, "Are Mr. Bill or Gumby in this?" No, but maybe some relatives. Zach says, "Oh wow, I have not seen this one either, but I love it so far." You're gonna love it. It's the craziest movie I've ever seen. For a low budget movie, it's so funny and so entertaining. You're gonna love it, guys. CU Confidential Headquarters. Malcolm McDowell plays this guy in the remake. Yes,
and he's not as good. And he's not as good as that guy. Yeah, that's yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's a very strange individual. You'll have to watch the movie to know more about him. But Winter Beast makes me happy. There's some movies there, but I'll show you this. Look at that creepy.
Yeah, what is that?
From what I remember, I've only seen the movie once, but from what I remember, the Winter Beast is just like a whole bunch of different creatures. So there's that stop motion guy, there's this guy. Maybe there are different versions, something like that. The movie doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's part of the fun. Fatal Exam is the other one. Jay and I are very familiar with this one.
They say it was barely released, so I'm not sure if maybe the filmmaker sold it himself for a while, or I thought it was a film I was familiar with, but I think I was confusing with Final Exam, which of course a whole different animal.
Right. Let's see here. Video Store Review says, let me move this here. I think they watched Winter Beast on Best of the Worst. Yes, they did. I remember Macaulay Culkin liking it. Well, what does Jay think of all these 80s movies getting new appreciation?
Well, it's weird to be, it's just kind of strange. Like I said, it was weird to see that the Vinegar Syndrome in particular was recreating the video shelf from 1989, 1990. All these films. I was like, well, my film has to come out now, because otherwise it's like, if you're gonna cover the whole shelf, you can't leave mine out.
Yeah.
At the time, that was home video was coming in. And so movies could make money going straight to video, which meant that like a lot of more movies could get made because videos were hungry for things. And then the video boom started to bust out. We didn't know that at the time we were making this movie. If we'd have made it a year later, you guys might have never even heard of it, or might have barely come out. So we didn't know it was kind of the end of an era at the time, because also around this time the horror genre collapsed, largely thanks to Siskel and Ebert and the kind of demonizing of slasher films being all about misogyny, and they were all these big talk shows, and Stephen King's sales went down too. So the home video collapse and the horror genre collapse were timed perfectly for my arrival in LA to make movies.
Perfect. Actually, there's a movie
somehow I eventually did, but it is kind of strange because I'm not going to say that I didn't appreciate all these horror movies coming out, because there was pretty much one every other week. You go to a theater and see a new horror movie. And that was pretty exciting. After a while, they kind of became the same because studios jumped in and they just wanted to make slasher films. So initially there was a bunch of, there was, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which was, amazing to see that movie made on such a scale and color after the other one was this black and white movie. And it was just all this great stuff just exploding everywhere. So it was exciting, but you didn't think, well, someday you're going to wish that it was like this. At the time it just seemed like, happy days are here to stay.
Yeah.
And they weren't.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it's interesting. I started wondering, I moved to LA and I started making movies in the 90s really out here. And I was wondering, because, Universal movies, they have a huge cult following. And then finally, like Hammer Films started having a following. And I just wondered, like, are 90s films, ever going to become a thing, especially like video features? But, man, they're totally a thing now. There's a whole, for VOD, shot on, SOV, shot on video, that's become a thing. So every dog has its day. But when you're making them, you don't think, and certainly people, you meet a lot of bitter, angry people. They're like, oh, nobody will ever care about this crap. And, it's like, yeah, they will. I mean, if you make crap and look at it as crap, then it doesn't deserve to be considered. But you get it out there, and it's so there you go. What was it like making films in the 80s? It was fun. Did I realize I'd still be talking about it now as being like considered a golden era of horror filmmaking? Heck no,
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing that I love. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so this is the kind of stuff that I was like, that's what founded my love of horror, but or in filmmaking in general. But you can really see the passion in those in that era of filmmaking. You can really see that those people really cared. They really loved what they were doing, and that's why that stuff resonates with audiences today, especially film collectors and film lovers. That's how I, even not being a filmmaker, if I just come at it as a film fan, that's what I love about it.
It was interesting at the time. Like there was a huge, like David Cronenberg. Nobody knew who David Cronenberg really was in the United States. Certainly not my professors in film school or anything. Right. And then he moved to America and started making American movies. So I was around for all that. When I Beyond Dream's Door, like when I was doing the music, which was really the last part of my contribution to it, I think there was a day where the guy had to catch up and do some other work or whatever. So I had a morning off. I did most of the score one day, and I was going to go back and do the in-credit music. I couldn't. I worked all day and night on this. I couldn't play 4 minutes without making a mistake. So I went out and I saw Dead Ringers, which was the first movie I'd seen in like 2 months. When you make a movie, you don't get to watch TV or do anything. So I went and watched Dead Ringers, and oh man, that movie just blew me away. It was the first film I'd seen in a while, and so the end credit music for Beyond Dream's Door does sound kind of like Dead Ringers. That's because I'd just seen it 5 minutes before I started to do. I mean, I knew the themes, but the way it was arranged and stuff. So it was exciting. It was exciting to some of this stuff. It literally came out of nowhere. There was a huge debate in my film school because they came from within the Cronenberg movie, the Parasite movie. What's the real title? The Parasite Murders. The Cronenberg.
Shivers.
Shivers, right? Which was not what I did as TV. I saw that on TV with some friends of mine. We used to get together and watch horror movies every Friday night, and it was all chopped up on TV. So the local station used to come to the editing classes, and they would show them what they cut out of all the movies that screened on TV, which was always a very popular, nudity, violence, profanity. That's all it was, like a half hour straight. So you'd try to remember what the movies they were from. And so around the time I was making Beyond Dream's Door, they came in, and I'd already taken the editing class, but they showed this reel, and they had, of course, every other shot from that movie was edited out for TV. And so students in the whole university were like, what is this movie? And who is this David Cronenberg guy? And then everybody watched the movie, and half the people thought it was garbage. He would never go anywhere. I liked it, and I already knew who Cronenberg was. So over the next couple of years, when he was making The Fly and these big studio movies, and they were making all this money, I was like, ha, you snobs, he thought that, this is the worst movie ever, who is this guy? He shouldn't even deserve to make a movie. But yeah, it was a huge ruckus was caused by the editing reel of deleted scenes from that movie.
Fed says, MC, I don't think that scene makes sense in context either. It doesn't. I mean, it kind of does, but it's one of those things. As CU Confidential says, Fatal Exam was a St. Louis area indie made in the late 80s. Salt City Home Video put it out on VHS in 1998. I did the box art for it. Oh, shit, that's awesome.
Cool.
Wow. Very cool. You did the box art for the original 1998 release? That's fantastic. Well, I'm hopefully you're excited to get the Blu-ray. That's amazing.
I'm ready.
Zach says, I see Asylum of Darkness is on Tubi. I'm gonna watch it tonight. How's the cut transfer on that version? Are you happy with that version, Jay?
I haven't watched it on Tubi. I have seen it on various streaming services, and you can get a Blu-ray of the movie. Actually, I have one right here in my hand. But the release was primarily on DVD, so you do get to see it in HD with the 5:1 mix and all that stuff. So the streaming versions of that film that I've seen look very good.
Yeah, I saw it off of Prime, Zach, and it looked fine. It looked really good. It looked really clean. As a matter of fact, why don't we transition over to talk about Asylum of Darkness? I've got a trailer here, so it put everybody sort of on the same page, and then we'll chat afterwards.
Okay.
I'm not crazy. I'm so happy to find you.
Your insanity is the real trap.
Who are you?
Your husband.
Go insane again.
Okay, there you go, folks. What a cast! It's a reunion of of sorts for Beyond Dream's Door. Jay, tell us about Asylum of Darkness and what inspired the film.
So I talked a little bit earlier about that. It was done in the spirit of doing another sort of unreality movie, developed as a treatment as a sort of unreality movie with a central character. In this case, it's not about dreams. There was one dream scene in the movie which we cut, so I didn't want to do another dream movie. So in this case, it's about a character who's not sure if he's insane or not. He doesn't think he is. The lead character doesn't think he's crazy, doesn't know what's real or what doesn't care, just needs to escape from the asylum and get back out into the real world. He's like the wrong man. I didn't do this. I need to get out. Once he gets out, he sees a lot of crazy stuff, but he's always seen crazy stuff, so that doesn't really bother him. He just wants to be free. But the movie's about him coming to terms with what made him go crazy to begin with and kind of owning up to what he really is. In a way, it was kind of based a little bit on the Boston Strangler, who once he was in prison, supposedly, once he realized what he'd done, was looking for a way to like make up for it. Like the Birdman of Alcatraz, very famous, real life guy who was trying to, find something good to do with his life. So that was kind of inspired by like, well, if you do realize that you've done things that are terrible, what do you do about it? And this movie gives the guy a chance to kind of like make up for it. So that's the whole, and another key concept of the movie, not give it away, was that like insane people aren't crazy. What they see is a real world that normal people don't see. They sort of see beyond the veil. So if a guy he meets in the asylum says like, what we see drove us crazy, but it's real. And if it knows that if it sees you, then you're in big trouble. So insane people see what's really going on. That's why they're insane.
Yeah. Zach says this looks great. I love 35 millimeter. Yeah, it's a really pretty looking movie.
I did a movie right before this called Close to the Season, which we shot in 4K on the Red camera. This was years before 4K was ever a thing, but you could do it. And that movie had a lot of night scenes in it. And I think that movie looks very good. But then we did Asylum of Darkness right afterwards on 35. And the night stuff was way easier to shoot and has a lot more depth and just plain looks better.
Wow.
I'm so glad for that reason alone that we shot the second movie in 35. But I really had a comparison, an A-B comparison. I mean, I started shooting the one movie 8 weeks after finishing shooting the other one. So if you want to talk to somebody who did both at the same level of technology at the same time, I was that guy. At Close for the Season, we shot 25 hours of material. On Season of Darkness, we shot, I think, maybe 17. No, we shot 35 hours because we shot 17 hours. And, you know, when you're shooting film, every take like counts. You know, there's a real sort of seriousness. Another filmmaker friend of mine, Jeff Burr, says you respect the take. You know, when you're doing a take, you respect it. In video, it's kind of free. So I'll just run another one, which has its own virtue sometimes.
Right.
I worked on cutting both movies. I was like, wow, this movie, there's a lot less footage to cut. It made it harder sometimes. But there was a real difference. And again, we stayed pure to film. We made a print, and we cut the negative, and the video transfers were done right from that negative.
Wow.
It wasn't done from a digital intermediate. There's a few optical effects which were done with CG rather than, that's the way they do those. But even the dissolves in the movie, those are film dissolves. They're not video dissolves.
That's awesome.
And yeah, Tiffany Shepis came out. It was interesting because I went back to Ohio to make movies with all my Ohio buddies and budettes, men and women in Ohio. And what kind of, not that I didn't like working with them again, because I did, but what I came away with the movie was like getting to sort of share Ohio with my LA actor friends. Tim Thomerson, Tiffany Shepis, Richard Hatch. It turned out to be Richard Hatch's last released movie.
Wow.
So suddenly, like, I'm back in Ohio making movies with people I made movies with, you know, as a kid, quote unquote. And here's all my LA friends making a movie with me. It was a real interesting, experience. And it was great having those LA people there. So it was kind of a foot in both my filmmaking past and my future, you know, my current thing. So it was really great having them all in that movie, you know.
It looks like you got some good reviews here. That looks intense. Zach says this looks awesome. Video Store Review says that guy has major John Cassavetes vibes. But wow, this looks crazy good. That guy, Nick, is actually the lead actor in Beyond Dream's Door. So if you watch Asylum of Darkness, you're essentially watching I was telling Jay, kind of a spiritual sequel to Beyond Dream's Door. It's not, they're not connected, but they feel very similar.
You could, when it starts off with Nick, the main character, you know, locked up in a padded room. And if you want to look at it, you could practically say like, well, yeah, you know, Ben Dobbs, Beyond Dream's Door guy, was, you know, locked up in an asylum and he was crazy. And like, here he is all these years later. And it is much, much later, which adds, I think, weight to the movie. Originally, had I done it right at the same time, I had to use Nick, which I probably would have. Yeah, if it's like a guy in his 30s or something, he's like locked up. It's like, you know, big deal when you're a guy who's more like 50, and then like now you've really got something, you know. So it's almost like he's been locked up that entire time between the two movies. I mean, Nick did other films, but if you only jump from one to the other, it's all, when it starts, it's almost like, you know, there's no dreams in Asylum of Darkness. There are this kind of rubber reality, as people call it. You know, it applies to both movies, and it is about a central character trying to, you know, figure out what's going on and what's real and what isn't. And my point of movies is like everything is real. The things which are unreal is just as dangerous as things that are real. Hopefully, in both movies, it's about drama in terms of it's connected to who that guy is, who that lead guy is. It's about the personalities, you know, stories. If you do like a character piece with no story, I think usually you just don't care. And the character is interesting. What happened? I don't know. Not much.
You got coffee.
Yeah. If you have a plot and you have characters, they need to be connected. You can't make a movie that's all plot with no characters. You shouldn't make a movie that's all about character. So in that way, they're kind of spiritually connected. It's also, I had the most freedom probably on those two movies.
Oh, wow.
In a way, in a big way. Close to the Season and Ghost Lake, I had pretty much final cut and all that stuff too. But yeah, Silent Darkness is certainly the sort of craziest what's real, what's not real movie I did since Beyond Dream's Door, certainly.
So Asylum was put out by Wild Eye. Were they the initial distributors, or how did that work out? How did the funding come about?
The funding was sort of family and friends. There were a group of investors that came forward. I had an opportunity to make Close to the Season right before that, also in Ohio, so I actually had to push back that film, but that actually gave the makeup guys more time because the money was in place. So they had like 2 months of prep before we actually shot, which was hugely advantageous. I did take that. I took that movie close to the season came out. It was finished first, and it came out, and I didn't really want to compete with myself. So I then like ran through the festival circuit with Asylum of Darkness, and we did get into some festivals, the Philip K. Dick Film Festival in New York, and that led to some other contacts and some great stuff. But so for a year, I just ran it through the festivals, and then I started looking for a distributor after that.
Gotcha.
And I think Wild Eye came to me. Rob at Wild Eye, he knew Beyond Dream's Door and liked that film, and was he ended up being the right guy for the job, kind of thing.
Gotcha. CU Confidential says, impressive array of effects in Asylum. Let's talk about that, because there's a lot of stuff in there. There's the stuff that really like jumped out to me. Like I said, I loved all the practical stuff, the skeletons and the monster stuff. I mean, like all the goopy effects. I don't want to give too much away, but I was really impressed because as a filmmaker, I know that shit's hard to do, and it's hard to make it look good, and it's hard to make it effective. So what was your thinking behind all that effects work?
It was a lot of that goes back to Brian Spears and myself. I wanted to do them practically because that was kind of the way it was conceived. And to have them on set with the actors, the big way to be able to do that, because it does take time. And Beyond Dream's Door, we learned, man, how much, if effect doesn't go wrong, forget about what else you're supposed to shoot. You just feel kind of helpless until you get it right. It's just a dumb, inanimate object. There's no reasoning with the effect. And so I'd done a lot of other movies with effects after that. But for Asylum of Darkness, I wanted to have 2 units so that the effects can kind of be done right and not hold up the rest of the schedule. And again, that led to having 35 so that we could have the multiple cameras and multiple crews. I knew that The Thing had done that. They on that movie they basically built 2 whole sets sometimes so they could be shooting on the same set twice. Because it was the exact same. We couldn't do that, but we did have a second unit come in and shoot even when we weren't shooting to do some of those effects scenes. So we would be there with the principal actors for the stuff they had to be in, and then the effects guys would be shooting. I'd come in and check in on them because we were usually shooting somewhere else in the same building.
Right.
It's basically 2 crews going at once to be able to get all that stuff done as well as it was. But that's Brian Spears was the main effects guy on that. The one thing he did was he knew that he wasn't going to be able to meet most of the actors before we did the movie. Tiffany Shepis, Tim Thomerson, Richard Hatch, they were all various places. He was not going to get to do head casts, because by the time they showed up, they would have to shoot. So what Brian said he was going to do was basically make masks, and he would make some of the things he did put on himself, because he goes, I won't complain, because if I get glue in my eye, I did it to myself, so it's my own fault. So some of the more complicated monsters are actually Brian himself. And then he made these masks, which then he could cut and make fit to the various actors. And of course, the masks had to be done really, really well, which he did a really nice job on.
Right.
And the whole faceless thing, is very difficult and we didn't have animatronics, but you could do reverse motion. So that's how all the tentacles and stuff were done. And again, with film, and we shot backwards. So they're not, you basically, you run the film upside down and backwards. The camera is flipped over and you're running it backwards. And then when you print it, it runs forwards. So that's how you do that without it having to go down a generation and be an optical. So that was all, again, so even the reverse motion things were shot practically.
Wow.
And then we did some additional shooting. So we had even more time to get some of the effects right. But yeah, it was all done right there, full scale, live and in person. There's some ghost effects which were done in CG, but that was always intended to be, But yeah, so 2 crews, really good effects guy, scheduling in terms of making room for the effects to have a little bit of time in between days where they have to. And again, he had 2 months of prep before we started shooting the movie. He fully fronted prep. As I trusted him, and I knew it was like, no, we're going to get, even though I'm in the midst of shooting this other movie, I met with him, we went over the script. So that's how that was able, 2 months of prep. 2 units, and then some pickups.
Nice. Yeah, prep is very important, especially for makeup. A video store says real life aging adds a Richard Linklater dimension to it. Yeah, that's that's an interesting way to put it. Let's talk about Nick. We were gonna surprise you. Nick actually followed me on Twitter, and I reached out to him. I was gonna have him pop in and surprise you, but unfortunately he was busy today. But he says hello. How did you meet Nick, and how did he sort of become your I guess your alter ego in cinema?
Yeah, for these 2 movies anyway. And he's been in several of my other movies too. Originally, in film school, you'll see this a lot. Like people usually like cast their roommate to be in their movie or whatever, the roommate's girlfriend and all this kind of stuff. That's usually a huge mistake, unless your roommate has to be an actor. That's fine. So I never wanted to do that. When I first started doing group production, Ohio State University had a film school, has a film school now, and had one then. For years in between, they did not. But they did these summer group production classes where you had to write a script and make basically a half-hour movie in very short amount of time, really 2 months.
Yeah.
So when I first did that class, of course, I thought I'd get to write and direct. And of course, I didn't, because I was new to the class and whatever. So I met this actor, Rick Kessler, who I thought was actually good. Because, a lot of these actors, so you meet somebody who's actually good, and you're like, wow, you're good. And if they're good to work with too, and if they're good on film and understand the stop, start, bored out of your brain aspects of making movies. So when I went to do Beyond Name's Door, the short version, I went to Rick, who I did not know, but I knew the teacher, and he got me in touch with him. And so if you find one good actor for your movie, you need another one. Who are you going to ask? Well, do you know anybody? So Rick had just done a production with Nick, and I think they'd done some other shows together too. So he recommended Nick, who I did not know, and they played the 2 roles in the short version of Beyond Name's Door. The different roles than they play in the feature, even though both actors are in it. I reversed the casting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So that's interesting. And the short's on there, so you can see. I kind of felt, for one thing, I just didn't want them to come back to do the same thing they'd already done. And maybe I felt that Nick was maybe more like Ben than Rick was or whatever. But it was really a motivation of like, well, I don't want to just have them do the same thing again. So let's flop the roles around.
Right.
So there's that to kind of look at and be interested in. And then other actors in the movie were, I found through that. But then when I came to LA, various people there liked Nick. I mean, Tim Thomerson and Richard Hatch were telling Nick he should move to LA and, be an actor. By that point, he was an adult. If you want to cast 20-year-olds, there's lots of 20-year-olds who want to be actors. If you want to cast somebody who's 50 or 60, by then people are either, a star or they gave up.
Yeah.
So if you're a good actor in that age, like you get J.T. Walsh, whose career took off when he was a man, not a cute kid or so that's really how Nick's. And originally when I conceived it, I thought of using Nick in the center role for this movie, for Asylum of Darkness. And so when I went to do it years later, I was like, this was what the character was conceived to be him. He's older now, but that actually makes the character better. So it was really also done to work with Scott Spears again and do another feature with him too. So there were loyalty, interest, experiment, all those are reasons why those guys came back. But Nick's good, and he's good to work with. And Susan Pinsky, who's in the movie, he found her for me when we did the feature Beyond Dream's Door. Nick came out here and did a small role in one of my first features out in LA. So, and the Hamlet version, which we did together, Horatio's Hamlet, he had written that for the stage, and I saw the one-man stage show. It's a one-man Hamlet with mannequins.
Wow.
It's called Horatio's Hamlet. Nick had written it, and he didn't know how it could be a movie, and I knew how it could be a movie. And I wrote the script. I was like, well, he'll be the only character, and everybody else will be a mannequin, a figure of what they are. So he'll be, so it's Horatio's telling the story of what happened to Hamlet years later. So it's sort of the rest of the characters are suggested by these mannequins. And yes, they're sometimes nearly faceless, so it's kind of a warm-up for Asylum of Darkness also. It's out there. We sold some copies. I don't know if it's still on Amazon or if they currently booted us. But that was a key movie in here. And that's shot on 35 too. Horatio's Hamlet, 35 minutes. So those are really the the movies which Nick has the biggest parts in are the original Beyond Dreams Door, Horatio's Hamlet, which is a half-hour movie, and then Asylum of Darkness. But I hope to work with him again. I have an idea for a Fall of the House of Usher, which I think I would have him play Roderick in.
Nice. Yeah, actually, we'll talk about Usher in a minute, because I want to talk about that short film.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other. Well, yeah.
Yeah, Video Store Review says the fact you shot on 35mm and used only practical effects in 2017 has to be respected. I think the only other filmmaker that does that is Tarantino. Yeah, probably. Hey,
yeah, not to say I met Quentin. I even edited a movie for him. Yeah, that's true. We did it before they did, because we shot a few years before that. So after we shot that movie, when it was being edited and finished it, like I said, other people started going like, yeah, practical effects is the way to go, kind of thing. Yeah. So I was a little ahead of the curve on that. Yeah. I wasn't trying to jump on his bandwagon or anything. They're just certain things that are better done practically, and you can use CG to help the practical effects. If you see like a seam or stuff like that, But I tell people, it's like if you go to a magic trick and a magic show, and all they do is like card tricks, eventually you start seeing how they do it. And that's the thing is, if you just do everything CG, you start to go, if you mix it up in a way where you can't tell what's CG and what's practical, then you're getting the best out of both worlds,
Right.
And that's how I think it should be approached. CG can do things great, certain things great. The practical effects can do certain things great. Like artificial gunshots in movies, they usually look like ass, let's face it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Just have some blanks, and then but yeah, practical effects are really good at certain things, and this story needed those kind of things. So yeah. But yeah, and again, the effects guy and me and everybody were just like, we're just tired of CG. Let's do it. And when you shoot it, it's done. CG, you don't know till later. You shoot all this stuff. Well, I hope that they don't end up doing that shot 5 minutes before they have to deliver it, and it looks like it. Almost any movie, You remember Air Force One, the Harrison Ford movie?
Yeah.
On the plane, like that's got CG and miniatures and stuff in it. And then at the end, when the plane actually like crashes, it's like the worst CG thing you've like ever seen in your life. It's just embarrassing, and it's obvious. It's like, well, that's what you get. You're out of money. Do it as a miniature. Release date's in 2 weeks. Ship it. With practical effects, usually when you walk off the set, it's like, yeah, man, we got it. With CG, you hope.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of the downfall of technology. I think too many people rely on that stuff, and that stuff will almost always let you down unless you have a lot of time and money. And we don't usually. Indie filmmakers do not have that luxury. You mentioned the movies you were filming when you moved to Los Angeles. There's one I want to discuss with you.
Okay.
That I'm curious how you ended up behind the camera, and I'm guessing this is where you met Tim Thomerson. I'm talking about Trancers 6. Actually, is he in that? I don't remember if he's in that, because I know it was the girl that takes over, right? As she becomes like a female Jack Death. So how did that come about?
So Tim Thomerson lived in the same apartment building as I did in Studio City. I met him on the set of Trancers 3, which I'm actually in as an extra.
Nice.
Andy Robinson is berating somebody who I drag out of the room, and I'm carrying an automatic weapon, and I'm wearing like a uniform. Courtney Joyner wrote and directed that movie.
I love Courtney. Nice guy.
Okay, yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good early friend of mine in Los Angeles. So I met Tim. I met him actually at a screening of Doll Man versus the Demonic Toys.
Okay.
I think Courtney brought me in there and said, just tell them you're my cousin, because this is not really, cast and crew. It's, it's just a private screening. And, so we watched that movie, and Tim was there. And afterwards, we all went out to eat. I remember Tim Thomerson going like, oh, man, squids, which is what he calls sci-fi fans. I don't know if other people would call him that by then, but he's the first person I ever heard call sci-fi fans squids. He goes, oh, man, this movie, squids are just going to squid out over this movie. They're going to love this. So we hung out at lunch, and then one day in my apartment building, I'm like going down to get in my car, and I open the door. There's like a short flight of stairs. I unlock the door, open the door, and there's Tim Thomerson standing at the bottom of the short flight of stairs holding like a card table upside down by the legs so that his phone and some other things can kind of be held inside the table. And so he can come up the stairs like this. I didn't know I hadn't seen Tim in 2 years. We met once. And so I opened the door and there's Tim Thomerson. I'm like, he kind of looks at me and I look at him like, Tim, we know each other, blah, 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 blah. He's like, oh, hey, goes to like shake my hand. And of course, like dumps his phone on the ground and the table and everything. And I was like, let me help you. No, I got it. And I was like, no, Tim, you really need some help. So I helped him and then he's like moving into my building. So we'd see each other. Wow. We'd see each other at the pool and talk about movies. I was making a film called Iron Thunder, which was my first real film in LA. Well, not really, but let's just look at it that way in terms of I wanted Tim in the movie, but it turned out he was like he was down in Mexico. He almost married somebody. He was doing a TV show in Mexico. So he wasn't in that film. Richard Hatch was. And then Tim came back and saw some of that movie. It was this army movie, kind of a Sam Fuller type of film. And he's like, oh man, I would love to be in this movie. So I was like, well, actually, I'm doing another one. So I did this movie called Unseen, which ended up being called Unseen Evil. Again, shot on film with Richard Hatch. And the producer, Dave Sterling, wanted Tim Thomerson in it. And I was like, so I didn't know, because they really couldn't afford both of them. But I ended up getting Tim and Richard in the movie.
Wow.
And so they were both in that. And then Tim eventually did move out, but he lived in my building for a long, long time. So we'd already done those things together. And then Transfers comes up. So I did a movie for I was working at Full Moon writing scripts, which didn't get made. I was supposed to write and direct, co-write with Dave Parker and direct these 3 Puppet Master films. We were in and out of casting a whole bunch of times. It never ended up happening. But then I ended up doing my first film I directed for Full Moon was this movie called Demonicus, which was shot on video in like 9 days to fulfill a contractual obligation they had to some actor. The original director, Dave Dakota, couldn't do it. And so I ended up doing it. And they're like, look, if you do this, do a good job, we'll give you a shot at Transfers because we're going to do a Transfers movie. Knowing I already knew Tim Thomerson, this was very exciting. Now,
right.
Not just Full Moon, but everybody makes these kind of promises. They're like, oh man, do this for me. And usually they never end up making the other thing, or they're just totally evil and they never, they hire somebody else instead of you, or turns up on cable. It's like, they made the movie without me. So lo and behold, Demonicus, no matter what people think of it, did well for the company. It was done really cheaply and did better than their last couple of movies they had done, videos at that point. So Transfers comes up. So Tim Thomerson, blah, blah, blah. So their whole concept was always going to be that it's a passing of the torch to a woman. Why don't we have Jack Death be a woman? Courtney had done Transfers 3, which established that those 2 characters had a daughter. And I was already thinking, like, the daughter should be who this is. This makes perfect sense. Courtney thought the same thing, pitched it to Charlie Band, and he liked it. And so really at that point, it became a passing of the torch movie. And we get Tim to like do sort of bookends. I wanted Tim to come in at the end and kind of fight with his daughter, and kind of they go off at the end together. So the beginning would be Jack Death sort of fighting this guy in kind of road warrior type of short opening scene. And then he ends up getting into the time thing somehow. And then at the end, he manages to come back to kind of get out of his body and meet his daughter and sort of save his own daughter's life. That was the original concept. But Full Moon, so I talked to Tim. He'd already done a movie for me. We lived 2 movies for me, really. But basically, Full Moon didn't want to do a movie non-SAG because he was a big SAG actor. And they didn't want to pay him what he wanted to be paid. And Tim told me, look, I'd do a movie for you for bus fare, but this is Transfers and this is Charlie, and I got to be paid. And Full Moon was like, oh, we'll just give him a suitcase full of money. I was like, that's not, Tim wants to have it be a real part. They were like, well, just turn it into he'll just come in for 5 minutes kind of thing. And so, yeah, I ended up doing exactly what I didn't want to do, which was a Transfers movie without Tim Thomerson. And then after that, let the record show, I did 2 movies with Tim Thomerson, one of which, Live Evil, is, practically I told people this is a Tim Thomerson wet dream movie, which I hope it is, where Tim's front and center of the whole movie. And then he came and did a smaller role for me in this too. So every time I talk to Tim, pretty much on every movie, he was always like, oh, you know, I'm pretty much retired. You know, from the very first movie I do with him, it was always like, oh, then he'd make 10 more movies. I'd come back to it. He's like, oh, you know, I'm pretty much retired. So now he tells me, you know, well, if you call me up, I'll do a movie for you. But otherwise, I'm pretty much retired.
Wow.
So that's how Transfer 6 ended up happening. So there's footage from other movies with Tim being Jack Death. But that's the sad tale of that. Neither of those movies I did with Full Moon the cuts which were released are not my edits of those movies. So I cannot completely disown them, but that's not my edit. It's not, the mixes were never finished. They were all kind of, you know, sort of rush jobs, which can happen at a place like Full Moon where it's almost like working for TV. Like they've got such a schedule. It's like every minute the movie's got to be finished.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the original idea. Sounded great. I'm a big Transfers guy. You know, it's so weird, but I credit Transfers 2 as the movie that really inspired me to make movies. And I think it was because it was the video zone, you know, because you see the behind the scenes is the first time you're like, holy shit, wow, they look like they're having such a fun time. And this is such a fun movie. I want to do this. So Transfers was very special for me, the franchise. And Tim, I met him at a convention. It was a Comic-Con, actually, San Diego. And I go up to him and I say, hey, I just want you to know you inspired me to be a filmmaker. I love the Transfers movies very much. Jack Death is very important to me. And I consider this a great honor to meet you and shake your hand. And he gave me a free autograph. I thought that was so cool.
That's cool.
You know, that's you know, they say never meet your heroes, but sometimes they're good people.
Oh yeah, no, Tim's from San Diego originally, and his dad, who lived to be I think 99 and just missed hitting 100, sadly. So Tim would always go to that convention because he'd be down there with his dad. When we were doing Live Evil with him, he was like always like, my dad, you know, he's not doing so well. Then his dad kind of made almost like a full recovery. But yeah, his dad in San Diego were a big part. And I got married in San Diego.
Oh, wow.
I told Tim, I was like, I'm getting married in San Diego. You're the only guy I know who lives there. So you had better be at my wedding because you're the guy who has the shortest distance to go. And he took my wife and I around San Diego for a whole day, which was a really fun experience, showing us because he grew up there and showed us where he'd surf. He took us this one spot, and there's this like cliff, like 30 feet up from the water. And he goes, okay, in the morning, like every fourth wave or whatever will come up high enough, and you just sit there and you wait, and it washes you off, and you go surfing off this thing. I was like, you still do this? Tim, who was in his late 60s at the time, I think. He was like, oh, yeah, I still do this. I was like, okay. But yeah, Tim took us all over San Diego and told us stories about growing up down there and stuff. And yeah, the thing I tell people about Richard Hatch and Tim Thomerson is like they're exactly the opposite sort of personality types you would expect. Richard off screen is more like Tim Thomerson on screen in terms of the roles he plays. Richard's life seems sort of chaotic and sort of spastic and all this kind of stuff. And Tim's just sort of the opposite, you know. But on screen, Richard's very calm and collected and stuff, and Tim's kind of the opposite. He's very easygoing and relaxed in person, even meeting you and total strangers in situations which would make us very uncomfortable. But on screen, Tim cares so much that he like gets angry at himself and gets all like pissed off if he blows a line. He's like, "Oh, that's it, I can't do it." So it's the complete opposite on screen and off screen personalities with those two guys. And so part of knowing Tim and working with him is, this is true for any actor, is getting them to relax. And it was just like, no, it's not your fault kind of thing. Or just, you know, and again, Tim feels he dries up if he does a lot of takes. So I usually shoot him out first, where like Richard loves repeated takes. And so you let him go later because he's going to love doing the extra takes, where Tim's going to start to psych himself out. Just feel that he's, you know, letting you down. You know, they both cared a lot.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I've done a lot of movies with Tim Thomerson, and sadly, the one I didn't get to do with Tim Thomerson was Transfers 6.
The Transfers one. Are you still in touch with Tim? How's he doing?
I haven't talked to him in about a year. I was talking to Nick the other day about Tim, and if I wasn't talking to you, I'd be calling Tim right now to go, "Hey man, it's been a year. What's going on?" He was talking to me about Sands of Iwo Jima, which I'd never seen and was about to watch. And
God.
and he just injured himself in some surfing incident, which Tim still surfing into his 70s.
Wow.
So that was so I hope he's recovered from that. But no, he's a great guy and can be a really good actor. But he needs to be. Yeah. He needs to be coached into it at this point, because he's retired. I'm not going to make another movie. I'm retired.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk about Richard. Sadly, we lost Richard, but I feel like he's going to live on, in just movie and TV fandom. I mean, I think he's definitely left a legacy behind. How did you first meet Richard? I think you mentioned you made a movie with him, right?
I did. Yeah, I was writing this movie, Iron Thunder, which was sort of a Sam Fuller Outer Limits kind of movie. And the producer, Dave Sterling, was looking for some name to get in it. I don't know if you know the filmmaker Don Jackson.
Yeah, I know Don.
Don. I just called him Don the Dragon Jackson after the martial arts. I met Don a couple times. Anyway, Don had a deal to do these series of movies with this one company, and they became very unhappy with Don and his movies. And they had investors, and so they needed somebody to come up and sort of clean up and make some movies. And so this producer, Dave Sterling, who I knew, who's sort of a famous and now infamous budget filmmaker. This was still in his early days. This was his first real movie where he had more money. We're going to shoot on film. And so he went and met Richard at a convention. He's like, what do you think about Richard Hatch? He's doing conventions. I mean, what happened with Richard Hatch was, the peak of his career was doing Battlestar Galactica. He read to be in Indiana Jones. He read to be in Star Wars.
Wow.
I won't go into the story about how he basically literally talked himself out of being in Raiders of the Lost Ark. His managers, it's a great story, but maybe I'll tell it later. But his career bottomed out because all the money he had, he invested with people who ripped him off. So for a while, he quit acting. He was like crushed, and he was angry at himself and everybody else, and went into therapy and all this stuff. And really, sci-fi is what saved him, because people forget old shows, and Hollywood forgets you immediately. But the fans of science fiction are a very, very special group in terms of being loyal and interested in stuff. And so he sort of went to one convention and discovered all these people cared about him at a time where he didn't probably even care about himself. So from then on, he was really dedicated to fans in a real sort of, not just an actorly being flattered way, which he enjoyed too, but really in a kind of personal way. So Dave Sterling had met him at a convention, was trying to get him to do this movie. I don't think he had a lot of confidence in Dave. So Dave said, I've talked him into coming to meet you. So we met at a place near my house in Studio City, which was where I was living with Tim Thomerson at this apartment building at the time. Met with him, talked with him, and then after that, he agreed to be in the film. The script wasn't written then, but I told him what it was going to be. So he did read the script for Iron Thunder, which he really liked. Richard always really liked my scripts and my ideas. Even when he did some slightly smaller parts for me, like in Asylum of Darkness, he was like, I really like what the character has to say. These characters always have something to say, and it's something interesting. I think sometimes he liked the scripts better than the way the movies turned out, which he said had a lot to do with budget, which probably it did. Or as the director, I'll happily blame the budget rather than myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, these were not roles Richard had played a million times before. This Iron Thunder and Unseen Evil, which I did not write, but where he plays a total villain in that movie. And then when he was trying to bring back Battlestar Galactica one day on Unseen Evil, when we were driving back from set, I drove him. And I said, okay, Richard, it was about a half-hour drive up in the mountains after we were done shooting. I was like, okay, Richard, what's going on with Battlestar Galactica? I hear you're going to try to make blah, 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 blah. And so he told me, yeah, he was. And so I was like, well, why don't you have us do it? The producer, Johnny Young, and myself, let's do this. And so it ended up that Battlestar Galactica was, he shot as really as a full pilot episode for a new show. That was the script was that long. Then he couldn't get the effects guy so I directed that with Richard, and pretty much the crew, all the post crew anyway, were people who worked on all my movies. So that ended up being a trailer, which got shown at conventions. Richard was very nervous to show it, and then the fans went ape over it. that's what got the show going again. Richard at one point went to get BattlestarGalactica.com. Nobody owned it. He couldn't believe it. I mean, Universal, nobody cared. Glenn Larson, nobody owned it. So he got it. And then nobody really wanted to take it back from him. So he was really the shepherd of that show for a while.
Wow.
So yeah, I ended up doing that with him. And then he wanted to go off and like direct stuff on his own. So he was like, I know I'll pay for my own mistakes, Jay, but I'm paying for my own film school. And a lot of those didn't get finished or one thing or another. That's, I would like to say that they'd be done if I had done them. But but anyway, yeah, so that's really the kind of the Richard Hatch story. Richard, let me tell you there's the Lost Ark stuff because it's a great story. Richard told me that he met on Star Wars and he ended up not getting the part, and then they brought him back for Raiders of the Lost Ark. George Lucas and Gary Kurtz, and Marshall, everybody was in there, Spielberg. And so when he came into the meeting, he goes, we're at somebody's house, probably George's or somebody's, and they were cooking lunch, very relaxed atmosphere. Oh, hey, what would you like on your chicken or whatever? And they're, hey, Star Wars, that was the last time we saw you, hey, what do you think of the way it turned out? Of course, by then, Star Wars was the biggest thing of all time.
Yeah.
So Richard proceeded to tell them what he liked about Star Wars and what he didn't like about Star Wars. Richard would talk. After about probably a half an hour of speaking, Richard realized that he was the only one speaking in the room.
Oh boy.
He said, so then he goes like, hey, well, let's read this scene, why don't we? And so they read he said, so he read the scene like once or twice, and he goes, I literally backed out of the room.
Oh gosh.
and he goes, after that, like, I didn't get, for a while I was getting offers. After that, I had to audition for parts. And yeah, so he basically, ruined his own career, as far as.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I backed out of the room.
Oh, man. Awkward.
Yeah.
Jeez.
He laughed about it. He was like, of course, it was years later. That story.
Right. So now that we've got Beyond Dreams Door beautifully re-engineered, for new eyes here, thanks to Vinegar Syndrome, what's the future of cinema for you? What can we look forward to coming down the pike?
Coming down the pike, I have some new ideas for features. I've been doing a lot of music and editing for people. So there are a lot of my most recent credits, and there are recent credits, are for that. I decided a couple years ago I've always done music. That's part of what got me interested in film, like I talked about. So I decided I would look for some movies that never had music to them, and not necessarily silent films. So I did a score for Island of Lost Souls, the Bela Lugosi movie, which I screened at some festivals and won Best Score for, which was great. I got to meet the Lugosi family, which is terrific. And there's other things we'd like to do together in terms of restoring some of their father and grandfather's films.
That's cool.
Which are public domain and usually not very well, represented. And then the next sound movie I did, which didn't have a score, was The Old Dark House, the Boris Karloff movie. And through that, I got to know Sarah Karloff, who's very great, and she shot an intro where I screened that. And I won a Best Score award for that too. And in between those two, I did Follow the House of Usher. I want to do a feature of my own of that at a house, which is now mine, which my great-great-grandfather built, called the Pink House in Wellsville, New York. It's supposed to be haunted. You can look up the ghost stories online. It's not haunted, but they're good stories, and it's a fabulous house and great location. I've shot bits of some movies there previously.
Okay.
I do a feature version of that. So part of my warm-up for that was this version of Follow the House of Usher done in France in the late 1920s, which I had seen on VHS years ago, never translated into English even. There was a version which had running translation. So it's a public domain film. So I did a score for that movie and did a lot of restoration work. This guy, John Ellis, worked with me on restoring it.
Wow.
And screened that at a film festival and won Best Score for that too. So subsequently to those, my most recent projects are Mystery of the Wax Museum, the Fay Ray, Lionel Atwell film, which I've done a score for.
Oh, wow.
I was all set to premiere in LA last year, but we know how that worked out.
Yeah.
And there's another silent film which I'm doing restoration work on with the Danish Film Institute called Heaven Ship, which is really the first science fiction feature ever made. They go to Mars. They go to Mars. It's a very sort of Star Trek-like setup. It's the first trip to Mars, and the only movie kind of like it afterwards is really Day the Earth Stood Still, in terms of like the aliens are not the enemies, as it turns out. So I've done a score for that, and I'm about done with the restoration work on that film, which I hope is someplace soon. And there's other Lugosi and other things I'm sort of tooling around on. I did a number of shorts before I did Beyond Name's Door. I won an Emmy for a short I did called The Birthmark, which Scott Spears shot for me. Wow. That was shot in anamorphic, so it's 235 with anamorphic lenses. So a friend of mine I met through a series of through Beyond Name's Door, actually. I met this guy, John Streisig, who I knew because he too had done a short film from a Kafka short story at the same time I did The Birthmark, which was based on a Hawthorne short story. So with Beyond Name's Door, when it came out in the mid-2000s, I was invited to the Lovecraft Film Festival in Portland. And John was there, and I met him really briefly, and he was like, well, we don't have time to talk now because I'm leaving, but let's have breakfast next week. And we've had breakfast and played golf and now worked together on things for all those years since then. So he's restored his film, which I helped him restore, and I'm restoring it, plus another film I did with Nick, a short from a Guy de Maupassant story. These are all sort of weird stories. I wouldn't call them horror stories, although they kind of are. So we're putting together basically a collection of 3 literary adaptations, which will be feature length with extras and stuff, so we could sell it as an educational thing. So I'm restoring some of my own films plus these movies from the 1920s. And Fall of the House of Usher and some of their new projects I want to get going on.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Fall of the House of Usher, I thought that was really great. I'd never seen that.
The Silent Film Channel approached me about wanting to put that up there, and I did. It's shown at the film festival, but hadn't really gotten a release. It's a terrific movie. Louis Buñuel, who did Andalusian Dog, which is where Reservoir Dogs title from, and whatever. He's a film school staple. Andalusian Dog is that short film. That was his first professional job, so he worked on that movie. I give him credit as screenplay credit. Depending on where you look and who you talk to, he either did everything, because of course he's Louis Buñuel, so of course he directed it, or he did nothing if you ask him. I think the truth is somewhere in between, but it's very surreal. There's some very surrealistic sort of elements to it, and it's just a film I wanted. The running translation didn't really do the French justice, because they're explaining what the translations are, so which takes longer than, they have to go like, well, he wants to go outside. Well, really, what he's saying is more interesting than that.
Right.
So a friend of mine, Rick Moses, who spoke French and has a French-speaking wife, and I knew a little French, we translated it properly and then restored it, and I did a score for the whole thing, which is, but it's the first feature-length adaptation of a Usher story. And the Corman version, there's a couple, they had clearly seen the movie. There's a couple things which are very similar. But the circle of fire around him at the end where his sister, and the key sort of dream scene in both movies is surreal in different ways. But anyway, it's just a film I wanted to sort of get people to see, because people should know this movie and they just don't. And there's been, since I did that film, which is a couple years ago when I first showed it at the festival, there's been additional restoration work, and it seems like that filmmaker Jean Epstein has kind of gotten a little rep again, because he was kind of a forgotten French surrealist. He ended up doing short experimental films quite deep into the sound era. But gotcha. I'm saying I helped him. Obviously some other people thought this guy needs to be rediscovered too, which he does.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I highly recommend you guys go check that out. That was very, very cool.
Yeah, it's on the Silent Film Channel on YouTube. Look at House of Usher. They seem real happy with how it's done. But yeah, it's really.
I'll put the link in the description so you guys can just go click that. It'd be easier to get to. Yeah. Okay, so we're sort of winding down here. Jay, I'm going to let you go, but do you have any final thoughts or any kind of final message to the fans when, a lot of people haven't seen this, so the first time they're going to see this is in this epic, beautiful Blu-ray restoration? Do you have anything you'd like to tell folks before they experience this movie?
This is the best the movie's ever looked and sounded. It's kind of the way we sort of, given its limits of budget and stuff, this is the best it's ever looked and sounded. This is the right edit of the movie to watch. There was a padded original version that came out on VHS that had a horrible sound mix just because, again, it was sort of like, well, time to ship it. So this is really, if you never saw it before, you're kind of doing yourself a favor to wait until now, even though maybe you didn't know you were waiting since 1988 and 89 to see this movie. But if you did, you made the right decision. And yeah, it's not my shortest feature because some of my features are almost 2 hours long. But so on that level, there's poetry in it, which has actually been in some of my other movies too. It is a very sort of Lovecraftian film at the time, which is why the Lovecraft Festival showed it. And it's in this book, Lurkers in the Lobby, which is about Lovecraft adaptations. At the time, I thought Lovecraft was not in public domain, so I couldn't really literally adapt a Lovecraft story. But it's very much in the spirit of the sort of, Cthulhu isn't in it. It's not a mythos story. But the whole idea is sort of a person opening a door into an alternate reality is very much Lovecraft. It's sort of a monster from the id. The whole key to this movie is that the main character doesn't dream. And so that energy, which would usually be expended and worked into your personality, builds up into this sort of kind of ultimate negative, which then comes into reality to get him. And everybody he goes to try to help, it wants to take too. So he sees them get killed, but then to everybody else, they just vanish like they never existed at all. So the monster can kind of use the rules of dream in the real world. And it's all his fault, again, because he, didn't dream.
Right.
So I think that's somewhat unique for dream movies. It's not, the thing that I plead with people is it's not a movie where the whole point of the movie is to figure out when he's dreaming and when he isn't. It's not a movie. And some people waste a lot of their time figuring that out. I think the way it's set up right at the beginning kind of tells you, it's like, if you think this is that movie, it isn't. This is more about what you really mean, not about figuring out, that's part of the fun, but the fun isn't like, he's not going to wake up at the end and it was all a dream. And that's never the point of this movie.
No, and I'll say this, it's the kind of movie, and this is a good thing, the kind of movie you need to rewatch at least a couple times to so really feel like you kind of encompassed everything. And I still have questions, and I'll email you. I've got like, wait, so what did this do and what happened here? But I'm not going to give anything away here. We've got some final messages for you.
Sure.
Thank you, Jay. Loved hearing you speak on your films.
Oh, thanks, Zach.
Jose Cadena says, excellent interviewed. I love the stories. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Jose. Jose had a part in all of this too, as you'll find out when he's on some of the extras too. He's a key early film life. He's a key character.
Awesome. Just Dave, thanks for coming on, Jay. I enjoyed the stories.
Good. Happy to share them.
And CU Confidential says, good luck with everything, Jay. Glad to discover your shows, MC. Get HOLLYWEIRD. Thanks, pal.
We are weird already. Thank you.
Yes. Video store review. This was a refreshing interview. Really valuable. Thanks and all the best. And Aaron's here. Hey, Aaron. Good to see you, man. Really glad to see you. See the film coming out in the box set. Incredible stories. And he says, fantastic interview. Aaron, thank you for joining, pal. And this is one of the things that I think is so cool is that we were able to talk to somebody who has been through the mill with Vinegar Syndrome. Like, we love Vinegar Syndrome here. We're big fans, and so we support them. So it's nice to hear filmmakers, which we assume they would have a positive experience, with Vinegar Syndrome with any company. So it's nice to hear you guys have a good time.
Yeah, there's another filmmaker friend of mine, Rolf Kanafsky, who I met through. Beyond Your Door is who I met.
I love Rolf. Yeah.
Rolf and I are very good friends, and we really met through Beyond Dream's Door and through Jeff Burr and our first features. His film, There's Nothing Out There, came out through Vinegar Syndrome. So when I was striking my deal with Vinegar Syndrome, I sort of got some good reports from him. And that release of that movie finally looks really good too. The previous releases, there were various issues because that was Super 16, and there was always, and they finally fixed all that over multiple iterations.
Look great, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I got good vibes from him before as I was negotiating my own deal.
That's fantastic. Aaron loves Tim Thomerson stories too.
Oh yeah, there's plenty more Tim Thomerson stories. If you go to my website, if you go to the film section, there's a thing called director's notes, where I really sort of tell and I've gotten emails about people about like, oh, we love these because these stories aren't just the typical BS. They're not just all about how great everything was, nor I hope, or they are about everything terrible, because the truth is in between the things. And so if you like this kind of stuff or want to like know about what making those movies was really like, as far as I'm concerned, go to the director's notes section on my websites, because all the films I talk about this kind of stuff. So check that out.
That's great. Guys, I'll put that in the description as well. When we're done here, I'll go in the description section and add all those links. So give me like 10 minutes after the show's over. The show's still going to continue. We're just going to say goodbye to Jay. I'm sorry, because I don't want to I don't want to bore him by showing a 5-minute clip of Christopher Walken acting like a maniac, which is what's going to happen next. Oh, actually, here's a good question. He is on Twitter, and if
just recently, just joined, so please, pump me up.
Yes, I'll put that on my.
I'm on LinkedIn.
On the links, but Zach, you follow me on Twitter, so I've been tagging him the whole time. So if you can find it that way.
I have one Christopher Walken story to tell you. It's not particularly fun, but it's a great story. I directed I came in on a movie which I won't mention at the moment. So I redirected 2 days on this one film. So I met these actors who I had to kind of win over because they'd had bad experience with the original director and stuff. And so finally one day I was like talking about because they were bitching about how horrible the original shoot was on this movie, and I was now directing, so I had to kind of convince them, hey, we're back here, let's like make something good out of what we're doing. So part of my interest in that was getting them to then tell, like, well, certainly you had worse experiences and worse stories than working on this movie before. And so one of the guys was like, he goes, oh, he told me some story. It started talking about Werner Herzog, who I actually got to meet and talk to one time. So a friend of his had just been in a Werner Herzog movie, which was the Christian Bale Escape movie. And anyway, so he goes, a friend of mine loved Christopher Walken and always wanted to be in a movie with Christopher Walken. He had some small part in this movie with Christopher Walken. The guy's like behind the counter at a store or something, or in some one scene. But he's all like, oh, Christopher Walken, what am I going to say? So Christopher Walken comes in because they pre-light. Walken's nowhere to be seen. They pre-light the scene, and they start by shooting Christopher Walken's angle. So this guy, they're shooting like over his head or something, So Christopher Walken comes in, and the guy's like, oh, man, I love you. You're my hero, and blah, blah, blah. You inspired me, and blah, blah, blah. Goes on and on. Christopher Walken's like, yeah, that's great. Is it okay if I tape these lines to your head? He literally had his dialogue on a card, put it on the guy's forehead. They're shooting from behind him, so they can't see that he's got this thing on his head.
Wow. They
do like 2 takes with Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken leaves, and so then the guy plays his part of the scene, just air.
Wow. Wow.
Christopher Walken moment. Oh, that's great. Yeah, can I tape these things put my lines on your head?
Wow. Yeah, I can see that happening. I can see that happening.
Maybe the guy deserved it for just becoming such a like vomiting up all this does Walken really want to hear that I don't know.
Right? Yeah, maybe. Jeff, don't worry, you can rewind it right now. Just the little player on YouTube, drag it back to the beginning, man, and we'll be there. We shall be there. Zach enjoys that story. Amazing. Yeah, I've got a couple Walken stories. They're not mine, but obviously apocryphal stories. Well, I'll share them one day. Okay, Jay, thank you so much, my friend. This was a real honor. And once the pandemic is over, since we're both in LA, let's get some coffee.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, please.
All right, I love it, man. All right, so we'll keep in touch. I'll drop you an email when I'm all done here, and we will all celebrate as soon as this box set is in our homes.
Absolutely, yeah. Get it to us.
All right, brother. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay, how awesome was that? Jay is an amazing dude, and honored to have him here with us. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do for you. Let me see. How can I'm just going to kick the guest out so that's a little easier to say. Okay, so check this out, guys. I don't want to keep Jay here, too long. Yes, Zach, I can't wait for this box set either. Oh my god, it's my favorite box set. Fuck all the other box sets. This is gonna be way better than the Arrow American Horror Projects. Terrible choices, awful. So here's what I'm gonna do. I didn't want to have have them hang out and be bored. So I'll keep this just for you guys. I found, where is it? Where the fuck is it? Oh, here it is. On YouTube, there's a 5-minute clip of all the crazy shit that Christopher Walken says in All-American Murder. The dialogue in this movie is going to make you want to run out and buy it right now. I 100% guarantee it. Let's watch the clip. It's about 5 minutes, and then we'll talk after, okay? Hang in.
You listen to me. I didn't do it. It wasn't my fault. My dorm mates burnt my snake.
Nice to be back at school.
You bring out the best in me.
Come on, how about it? Coffee, tea, methamphetamine. That's a hot piece of flesh. So your family really goes to church together?
Yeah, doesn't yours?
My family doesn't go to the cupboard together.
What is this, a parade? Move these people back. What are you doing? You cop? Scram.
Marco, come out of there, sweetie.
You bitch! Smart woman. Luann. Battle woman.
What the hell does that matter, goddammit? You piss on somebody, you piss on somebody.
I never forget a face. Especially if I've sat on it.
Whatever happened to a punch in the belly?
That a request? Happy to oblige. I'm a public servant. I love that little mole on her butt, don't you? And how about that sensitive left nipple? And what mouth action? I thought jaws only moved that fast in water.
I knew a girl named Leslie once. I used to call her the squirrel because she was always grabbing my nuts. She grabbed them so hard once she almost crushed them. I think she was my first crush.
Face it, Arthur. Not her type.
So what brings you out here this late?
Following the scent of mystery.
Oh, that scent was no mystery. It was me shitting my pants.
You have a problem, don't you? It's called limp dick. Saved my face. I like my face. In the time it takes you to get a hard on, she could Simonize the car and learn Hebrew.
He knew where they were because he planted them there. He had to get to them before I did so that he can finger me. I'm curious. Is there a nobler way for you to be making a living, like child prostitution? I don't want vodka. I want evidence.
Maybe I am. Maybe I'm sick of pulling slime suckers off scum fuckers and calling it justice. Stay out of locker rooms.
Artie, your snake? When I was a kid, my uncle gave me 2 pet chickens, but my mom said no, that they smelled, so I gave them to my teacher. Weeks later, I asked her how they were, and she said, Wendy, they were delicious.
That's the problem with life, isn't it? Life, love, the whole salami. You plow enough shit, take enough heat, feel enough pain. One day you know.
You know, I hope it doesn't bite.
What?
The bug you got up your ass. It's crawling around there right now thinking the same thing I am.
What's that?
It's thinking, wow, I've never seen a bigger asshole before in my life.
I'm going home now. I go over there and I walk in. There's this cupcake on the rug, naked. Wants to see my badge. A second later, she's all over me, wiggling, jiggling. I can't get hard because all I can think about is my ex-wife, how she nagged me to quit the force. Work for her brother, selling patio furniture. To me, the badge meant something. To her, it meant no money. So she went off, married this guy, Leslie, moved to Los Angeles. He owns a cheese factory, makes $200,000 a year. Nobody loses. Leslie gets my wife and daughter. Every Christmas, I get 12 pounds of cheese.
So you mean if Jack the Ripper did laundry, you'd let him?
As long as he didn't rip clothes.
Only friend you ever had was a snake. Only thing you can relate to.
Well, we understood each other. No one wanted to touch him either. I guess Doug Sawyer's not our guy. Just a stab in the dark.
Every Christmas, I get 12 pounds of cheese.
Of course it's my knife, you sausage.
You cocksucking motherfuckers. I hate you fucking all. You're all a bunch of fucking pigs!
You know what? I didn't see that whole clip, so I hope that wasn't spoilery. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't want to know too much more. But holy crap, isn't that dialogue the craziest thing you've ever heard? And how much of that dialogue? Yeah, Zach, the dialogue is genius. I told you, the dialogue alone is going to push sales. If people know how weird the writing is, they're gonna buy it. I would have bought it just based on from that. Wow, what a set of lines said and Wakanese. It is so bizarre, so bizarre. Oh, he did this so he could finger me. I mean, I know what he was saying, but out of context, it's hilarious. They burned my snake. What the fuck? Yeah. This is going to be good. This is going to be good. Zach says, I can't believe I've never heard or seen it. Yeah, same here. I've never even heard of it. Proof that he didn't win an Academy Award for nothing. Yes, he's quite an actor. Now, at this point, Walken had done all these big movies. So how does he get on this? And it looks like he's in the movie a lot, which is good. It's not like 3 scenes. He's in it a lot. So that's the good news. That's the good news. He's in it a lot. Zach is down to clown. Love it so much. Yeah, you got to grab it. This is going to be a good one, I think. I'm excited to check this out towards the end of the month. Okay, guys, time to wind it up here. I had such a great time talking with Jay Woelfel about his film, Beyond Dream's Door, and Asylum of Darkness, which is available on Prime. I'll say this. It's a long movie. So keep that in mind. It's a long movie, and it's one of those mindfuck type of movies, so you're not really going to know what's happening, but it's really well done. It's got great special effects. Tiffany Shepis, Tim Thomerson. So you guys are really cool people to latch on to. I recommend it if you're looking for something to watch. I think it's on Tubi if you want to watch it for free. It's on Prime. It's $5, I think, to rent it. That's what I paid. Fed says, those scenes were actually the movie, the way the movie was shot. This isn't just a collection of random scenes. Yeah, it's only a 5-minute movie. Zach says, great transmission, Mastercast. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. We try. We definitely try here. Mindfuck is my favorite. Well, you're going to like Asylum and you're going to like Beyond Dream's Door. They're both mindfuck movies. I'll tell you, to be honest, the first time I saw Beyond Dream's Door, I'm like, what the hell was that? but there was something special about it. And the second time I watched it, I was like, wow, yeah, there's something really unique. It's not your typical horror movie, and I'm excited to get it on Blu-ray. I don't know if you guys caught the announcement at the beginning of the show, but I got my first vaccine. The needle they gave me was like this big. Well, you can't really see it in context, but okay, so this is my can of wine. This is about half the size of the wine, of like of a normal, aluminum can. Big fucking needle. And it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. It goes in and it's out. It's a little sore now, but that's typical. But yeah, halfway there, halfway home to safety, moderate safety anyway. Hey, Aaron, thanks for stopping by, man. Very cool. I will go back and watch the beginning. Well, I appreciate that, man. It's funny. We both had live streams at the same time. I appreciate you hanging in and coming for a visit. Okay, my friends, tomorrow is the first truncated episode of Physical Media Review, Saturday, and Review Roundup. So you'll get to see the first 3 Physical Media titles, and everything else will be Patreon exclusive. I'll tell you now, there's 4 titles I leave out of Review Roundup for Saturday. So keep that in mind. If you're interested in joining Patreon, it's the place to be. It's the after party. Here's what I'm going to do. Oh, no, don't worry, dude. No, it's fine. It happens, man. Don't worry at all, dude. Don't worry at all. I love you, Aaron. So let's do this. Let's reconvene tomorrow. I'll be here. I hope you will be as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode of HOLLYWEIRD. I'll see you when I see you. Remember, your friendly neighborhood Master Kaz loves you just the way you are. As a matter of fact, yeah, I think I love you forever. I think so. Let me think about it. Yeah, I think I'm there. Okay, pal. We'll talk soon. I love you. See you next time.